A federal judge nominee gets asked the easiest questions in America. Do cops kill unarmed black men? Are voter ID laws racist? And suddenly it's like she's being quizzed on quantum physics. This isn't advocacy, it's evasion. Kennedy's locked in. She's cornered. And the mask? Slipping fast.
You said, I'm going to quote, it's inconsistent to denounce white supremacy but not repudiate voter ID laws. Did you say that?
Thank you for the questions, Senator.
You're welcome.
I believe that was an interview I gave in the days after Charlottesville,
Right.
and I believe those statements were it was in my role as an advocate regarding my work representing voters in Alabama challenging.
So you didn't mean them as a person?
I made them in my role as an advocate.
Do you mean them as a person? I'm not asking you in your role as an advocate. Do you believe that if you're against white supremacy, you have to be against voter ID laws?
Senator, in my role as an advocate, I have.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about this. It wasn't the case. I'm asking you what you believe, and I don't appreciate you dodging my question. Now, this is a serious position you've been nominated for. Do you believe that someone who is against white supremacy also has to be against voter ID laws?
Senator, no. The Supreme Court has held that photo ID.
What do you believe?
I believe that the Supreme Court has held.
What do you believe personally?
I believe that photo ID laws have been held to be constitutional.
Do you think voter ID laws are appropriate or inappropriate?
I believe those are questions that election officials.
Do you believe that voter ID laws are appropriate or inappropriate?
I believe that photo ID laws have been held to be constitutional. I believe there are cases in which they are.
What do you believe?
I believe there are cases in which they are appropriate.
What do you believe?
I also believe there are cases
in
which they can.
What do you believe?
Senator, let her answer, please.
I'm trying to. We both know what's going on, Mr. Chairman.
Let her complete the sentence.
Well, let me do my own questioning, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your help, Professor. Do you believe that voter ID's laws are appropriate or not?
I believe there are circumstances where photo ID laws can be constitutionally implemented, and I believe that the Supreme Court has also held that there are circumstances when they would not be constitutionally permitted.
Okay. All right, Ms. Chaudhry. Am I saying your name right?
It is Chaudhry.
Chaudhry. Thank you for correcting me.
Thank you.
In 2015, you were on a panel at Princeton University. You said that the killing of unarmed black men by police happens every day in America. Did you say that?
Senator, I don't recall a statement, but it is something I may have said in that context.
You think it happens every single day?
Senator, I believe in that statement, I was making a comment in my role as an advocate, and I was engaging in rhetorical advocacy, which
But do you believe that police officers kill unarmed black men every day in America?
Senator, I believe the killing of unarmed citizens by law enforcement is tragic, and I believe in that instance
I think it's tragic too, but do you believe, this is a really simple question, Counselor, do you believe that cops kill unarmed black men in America every single day? You said it at Princeton.
Senator, I said it in my role as an advocate.
Oh, okay. You didn't mean it.
Senator, I said it in my role as an advocate to make a rhetorical point.
So when you say something that's incorrect, it's okay to excuse it by saying, oh, I was being an advocate? What do you believe? Do you personally believe that cops kill unarmed black men every single day in America?
Senator, I believe law enforcement have an important and challenging job in this country.
That's not what you said, though, Counselor.
Senator, I say before you here today that I do believe law enforcement have a difficult and challenging job, and I also understand the difference
I just think that's an extraordinary statement to make with no data to back up. None whatsoever. There's no basis for you saying that. And you knew it then and you know it now. How can one possibly believe that you're going to be unbiased on the federal bench?
Senator, I believe my record shows that I have worked collaboratively with law enforcement in Boston, Chicago, Mississippi, and Milwaukee to solve complex problems to promote constitutional, effective, and safe
Your record
policing.
shows that you believe cops are guilty until proven innocent. Your record shows that if a cop, if a cop shoots a criminal, it's the cop's fault. And if a criminal shoots a cop, it's the gun's fault. I've read your record. I've read your record, Ms. Merle, and I don't appreciate you not answering the question straight up. I would respect you a lot more if you'd just tell us what you believe and not try to hide it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, Ms. Abudu, congratulations. I want to just talk to you, at least initially, a little bit about the law. Ms. Abudu, what's the adequate and independent state grounds doctrine?
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
You're welcome.
In my practice, I actually haven't had an opportunity to use that principle or doctrine, but my general understanding is that it speaks to the fact that if a federal court is able to resolve an issue based on state law grounds, then that is what should lead in terms of the court's ultimate decision.
Okay. What is the selective incorporation doctrine?
That also, in the voting rights or civil rights context, is a term that I haven't had to come across. But what I do know is that as a legal research and writer, and for sure confronting possibly new areas of law, I look very forward to doing my due diligence in terms of making sure I'm familiar with doctrines such as that one.
Do you know what it is?
So no, I'm not familiar with it sitting here today.
Incorporation doctrine? Okay. Well, you're going to see a lot of it if you're confirmed on the 11th Circuit. Can Congress pass any law that the Constitution doesn't prohibit?
Based on the frame of your question, I would say yes, that sounds right.
So you think Congress has plenary power?
Well, I would first look to what the Supreme Court has said in terms of following precedent.
No, but I'm interested, if I could, Counselor, in your opinion, does the United States Congress have delegated powers or plenary power?
Well, the Congress has both, I would say, from my general understanding. Again, it depends on the context and the issue, but
Okay.
it is.
Can you explain the difference to me between strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny?
Senator, strict scrutiny is the highest level of scrutiny that's often applied in constitutional cases.
What's the definition? I'm sorry, go ahead. Excuse me.
So it requires that a state, when enacting a law or regulation, have a compelling governmental interest for doing so, and that the law is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest.
Okay.
And then intermediate, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so intermediate speaks to the issue of having a substantial interest or that is, or an important governmental interest that is substantially related.
Okay. Do you believe that the meaning of the Constitution is immutable, or does it change over time?
Senator, I would say that the Supreme Court in some cases has analyzed that issue, and the response really does depend on the context and the issue. But what the court does or has done in its approach, of course, is look to the plain meaning of a statute or of the Constitution, because that really is where the inquiry should start. And if the language is plain, then that is where the inquiry can end.
Okay, thank you for that. You were involved in a 2021 report from the Southern Poverty Law Center about voting in Louisiana. Did you say, quote, racist white Southerners, close quote, and, quote, hostile white voters and governmental officials in Louisiana continue to make local polling places and early voting locations threatening spaces for black voters? Did you say that?
Senator, I do not believe that I said that. I haven't read that publication in
Will
some
you help
time.
write it?
I helped to draft the publication and approved it, but I'm not familiar with that
Oh,
language.
you don't, okay. In that same report, did you say, well, tell me where in Louisiana local polling places and early voting locations are threatening African-American voters? You said it, so which polling places?
So again, Senator, obviously I don't have that report in front of me to be able to read and remind myself of the examples that might have been shared. But what I can say is that Louisiana.
Let me cut you off because I'm going to run out of time, Counselor. Let me ask you one more. In August 2021, we're not talking 20 years ago, we're talking 2021, you were involved in another report by the SPLC. And you said that voter identification, photo ID to vote, is burdensome and does not serve any legitimate state interest. Do you really believe that?
Senator, identification for voting is
Yes,
something.
but first, do you really believe that? You said it. You meant it?
The Supreme Court in Crawford v. Marion County has already upheld voter ID laws as per se
Yeah, but you said it
constitutional.
didn't serve any legitimate state interest. Do you believe that?
Again, Senator, without that language in front of me, it's hard to understand
You
the
said
context.
it. Here it is, August 2021.
Well, there are
I'm
cases.
just asking you to explain to me why having to prove you are who you say you are before you vote doesn't serve, you said it doesn't serve any legitimate state interest. I'm just asking to explain that statement to me.
I understand, Senator Kennedy, and again, without being able to see the language that appears before and after, it's hard for the context.
You deny that you said it?
I can't say that I haven't seen that language in front of me, but what I do know is that there have been voter ID cases in which courts have found
But
that
I'm familiar with the case law, but I'm asking what you think, because you may be on the 11th Circuit. Do you believe that voter ID is inappropriate?
my commitment is to uphold the Supreme Court's decision in Crawford v. Marion
I know, but
County.
here you said it was inappropriate. You deny that?
Well, again,
Say again.
Senator, it would be helpful to know if that section of the report also cites to cases in which federal courts have found that certain voter ID laws do pose an burden on voters.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
If Senate confirmation hearings are meant to reveal judicial temperament, this one exposed something far more unsettling: the art of selective amnesia dressed up as legal nuance. The nominee didn't just sidestep Senator Kennedy's questions. She performed a full intellectual Houdini act, vanishing her own past statements the moment they became inconvenient. Let's not get distracted by the theatrics. Kennedy wasn't conducting a legal symposium. He wasn't drafting a bar exam. He was doing precisely what the Senate is supposed to do, testing whether a nominee's public record matches their private convictions. And what unraveled under that basic scrutiny wasn't pretty. Take the question that cracked the facade wide open. Do you believe unarmed black men are killed by police every single day in America? It wasn't a legal riddle. It wasn't a philosophical trap. It was a direct inquiry into whether this nominee, the potential future arbiter of constitutional questions, stands behind the incendiary claims she's publicly made. Her response? A masterpiece of evasion. That was rhetorical advocacy, she insisted, as though those two words can magically absolve public statements of their real-world consequences. But here's the inconvenient truth. Rhetoric doesn't exist in a vacuum, especially not when it comes from someone vying for a lifetime seat on the federal bench. You don't get to fan the flames of public discourse at a Princeton panel, only to douse them with technicalities when the Senate asks what you really believe. And let's be honest, the public isn't fooled by this dance. Everyone knows the difference between a lawyer making a narrow courtroom argument and a judicial nominee dodging the core values question. The nominee tried to frame her remarks as detached legal advocacy, but Kennedy wasn't buying it, and neither should anyone else. If you plant your flag on controversial ground publicly, you'd better be prepared to defend it under oath. Otherwise, it's not just your credibility that crumbles, it's the entire premise of impartial justice. The same evasive contortions showed up in the voter ID exchange. Her record, clear as day, describes such laws as racially discriminatory and burdensome, language lifted straight from the playbook of legal advocacy groups. But when Kennedy pressed her, suddenly her memory grew foggy. The phrasing, unclear. The content, she couldn't confirm or deny. The beliefs, apparently, they exist in a quantum state, simultaneously held and disavowed, depending on the political weather. It's not about whether voter ID laws are good policy. Reasonable people can, and do, disagree. It's about whether a judicial nominee can answer a basic, unambiguous question about her own public statements without performing semantic acrobatics that would make a lobbyist blush. Because let's face it, if a nominee can't clearly articulate her position on such a foundational civil rights issue, how exactly is she supposed to preside over cases involving those very questions? The judiciary isn't an academic debating society. It's a place where real people face real consequences. If a judge's worldview is buried under rhetorical fog, the public's faith in the system dissolves right alongside it. Let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't a hearing. It was a masterclass in evasion. A nominee for your federal bench squirming through basic questions like the truth might bite. And if that doesn't set off alarm bells, it should. Because judges don't just interpret the law. They shape the rules that govern every vote you cast, every right you hold, every freedom you defend. And if someone's already hiding their beliefs before they get the robe, imagine the damage they'll do once they're wearing it. So don't sit this one out. Smash that like button. Sound off in the comments. Tell me, do you trust this nominee to uphold the Constitution or just her political connections? And hit subscribe, because this fight for the courts is just getting started. Stick around. We're not done exposing the power games. Not by a long shot.